That was Imagine Dragons with Bones, and you're listening to the Arvo Flow. Well, it's time to head to a fantastic interview that we secured here for the Arvo Flow. It's with the iconic Australian actor and musician Alan Fletcher, who played Karl Kennedy on the soap opera Neighbours, of course. This is the first part of our interview.
Back in 2019, I went up to the Tamworth Country Music Festival to do a John Prine tribute show. John Prine being probably the biggest influence on me in the country Americana genre, and I had a fantastic time. And I was lucky enough to bump into a couple of guys up there, very established Americana artists in Lachlan Bryan from Lachlan Bryan and the Wilds, and Damien Caffarella, who's a sideman in that band. They're also producers, and they said, look, why don't you come down to the studio, have a bit of a sing, let's look at some writing and, just generally bump some stuff around. Well, it wasn't really until COVID hit that I took them up on that. And out of that, we've got, sort of about 15 songs now that really speak to how I feel about the world. I love country music and I love Americana because it really is incredibly specific. It deals with life in very specific ways, which is just fabulous. And it's kind of it is a departure from rock and roll, that's for sure. But the whole notion of three chords and the truth is very attractive to me.
There we go. Fantastic work. I just want to ask you, so I'm interested in the balance of sort of being a full-time actor. Does that almost prohibit you from being able to focus on your music professionally?
No, it's pretty good, actually. The wonderful thing about Neighbours is, first of all, I do get a fair bit of time off from the show. There's periods of time where I'll have a few weeks off here and there, so that's very advantageous. But also the schedule is incredibly varied. 1 week you might work for 50 hours, and the next week you work for 20. So there is a lot of time running around to do other things and plan other things. But it is true to say, though, with Neighbours finishing on filming on June 10th, I'm going to have a lot more time now to focus on the music.
Great work. Well, let's just focus in on this latest release, Meet Me on the Steps of the Bombed Out Church, produced by Lachlan Bryan and Damien Caffarella at the Melbourne studio there. And I just want to get you to sort of tell us the background about exactly what's going on in terms of themes behind the music here, because it's quite profound and certainly a topic of real interest for me on a personal note.
Yeah, someone has always spoken to me too. The Bombed Out Church, just so people understand, is actually a St Luke's Church in Liverpool, in the city of Liverpool, which is like a second home to me. I have to say, I go to the UK all the time, and I love the city of Liverpool and the people from that city. And the church was bombed in the Second World War, and it's remained unrestored as kind of as a tribute to the fact that as a memory of the bombing that Liverpool went through. In fact, Liverpool was the most bombed UK city in the Second World War. Not a lot of people know that. And so the St Luke's Church, the bombed out church, has become the big focus of Liverpool. People go there to meet up on the steps. They go there. They call the taxis to come and pick them up there. It's that sort of thing. And this song is basically saying let's all come back to each other. Let's find our way back to each other. Let's make our apologies. Let's remind each other how much we love each other. It's kind of a beautiful, really Scouser feel to the song, and it's pretty much a folk song. So I've always been attracted to it, and I'm really pleased to finally get a chance to release it.
Well, you're just giving me feelings of getting off the train at Lime Street, Alan. It's great to hear all that. I want to sort of move on and just ask you about any plans you might have when it comes to the live music scene.
Yep.
You did tour the UK as a band, with your previous band, Waiting Room, 10 times across 8 years back in the past. So just wondering, are you going to get that bug again to maybe get some tours happening?
Oh, absolutely. In fact, I'm heading over to first of all, I've got my launch gig for this EP here in Melbourne, in Richmond, at a venue called the Palace of Magical Experiences. That's on June 25. And then I head straight off to the UK. I've got a couple of gigs launching the music in London in early July, and going to a couple of Americana festivals to play. And then in September, I'm touring right around the UK with the music, and as well as doing my Dr. Karl tribute show. It's kind of an in-conversation show about the life and times of Karl Kennedy, which I hope to also be doing here in Oz next year. So I've got plenty on, that's for sure, and there will be tons of music. And I'll really be ramping that up over the next the next 6 months.
Alan Fletcher on the Arvo Flow. He'll talk more about all things Neighbours right on the other side of this. Do not go anywhere. That was Michael Bublé with Never Not Loving You. Well, we'll always be loving Neighbours, that's for sure, despite the fact that the soap opera won't be on our screens for much longer. Time to return to our interview with one of the stars from that show. It's Alan Fletcher talking about how he fell into his TV career, which he thought would last 1 year, ended up lasting a few years more than that, I think we can say.
You bet. Yeah, I started actually in Perth, in WA, as a kind of an apprentice actor. First of all at university, and then moved into the professional world. And I actually did just back-to-back plays, training with the best professionals in Perth there, many of them from England, just learning my trade. And then I moved east and did more plays. Until eventually I fell into television in the sort of mid-'80s and in some major miniseries and that sort of thing. And a TV show called Cop Shop, if people can remember that one, way, way back. So I started doing lots and lots of TV and eventually mercifully fell into a terrific TV series called Embassy, which was being made by Grundy Television. And when I came out of that, they asked me if I'd like to do a year on Neighbours. Well, I was pretty excited about that because my daughter was about to be born, and I thought, gee, this would be good to have a one-year job, which became 28 years. So that's history.
That is fantastic. I love to hear that. And obviously it'll be remiss of me not to ask you about Neighbours as we try and digest this news that it's all going to come to a very sad end very soon. But 28 years, no less, as you just spruiked there. Why don't you sort of take us through your personal highlights, because you've seen so much, so many characters introduced, reintroduced. You must have just so many amazing memories.
Oh, I do, of course. I mean, right from my very first scene, standing on Ramsay Street with a young Jesse Spencer at my side, where I first purchased 28 Ramsay Street 28 years ago, to yesterday, literally yesterday, where we filmed the last scene that will ever be shown on Neighbours. Incredibly emotional scene with an amazing amount of returning actors in it. So that's really bookended the fantastic life on Neighbours. There's been lots of big stories, the big affairs with Sarah and Izzy. Probably the love triangle with Izzy was the greatest fun to be had, since Natalie Bassingthwaighte, who plays Izzy, and Jackie Woodburn, who plays Susan Kennedy, are great pals. And so we had a fantastic time together with that story, which had many, many twists and turns. I must say, Ellis, I love the comedy. I love doing comedy on Neighbours, and we get a fair bit of that in there. And my favourite episode was actually episode 7,000. Karl Kennedy found a scratchy ticket worth $7,000, hadn't been scratched, and then he lost it and had to track it down in Erinsborough, all in one episode. And eventually he had to nude up at Toadie's house because he was having a naturalist lunch, and he found the Tats ticket stuck to Toadie's backside. As silly as a wheel, this episode, and my favourite of all time.
Oh, that's excellent. Alan, we're sort of on the home stretch here. Obviously, you can't tell us exactly what happens, but can you tease how this sort of last episode might look for viewers?
Well, there has already been a few sort of releases, and we know that Jason and Kylie did come back and do an appearance for these last scenes, which is fantastic. And there have been many other returning characters that have been announced, like Peter O'Brien and so forth. Of course, Natalie Bassingthwaighte playing Izzy is back and causing absolute mayhem, as you can only expect from her. My son, Malcolm Kennedy, same thing. So there's a wonderful, wonderful list of returnees. So there's lots of actual solid story for people in these last episodes, but also the big focus is going to be on celebration, on celebrating this show that's gone for so long and is so loved by so many people. What we want is, out of those last closing minutes of the show, is for the audience to have a tear in their eye, to remember fondly the show that they loved. And, even if people don't watch Neighbours now, a lot of people watched it in the past and don't watch it now, I hope they come back and just watch these last few episodes. It's kind of a trip down memory lane and to pay homage to a show that really has made television history. It's the longest running TV show in Australian history.
Iconic Australian actor and musician Alan Fletcher on the Arvo Flow there. Well, we'll be wrapping up the show on the other side of this. Stay with us.